In today's Task 1 writing lesson, we'll be talking about how we are scored for our writing Task 1 letter. Really important that you have at least some understanding of how the IELTS examiner will be scoring you so that you can focus on these assessment criteria in your own writing. So the examiner will grade your writing against 4 key assessment criteria, and this is the same for really all writing tasks. Each of these assessment criteria are graded at 25% each. So there is equal importance to each of the 4 assessment criteria. And here's the first one, task achievement. And again, this is the same for all IELTS writing tasks, academic or general, task 1, task 2. Task achievement, how well you answer the question, how well your letter responds to the information you're given in the question. If you completely change the purpose of the letter to not meet the question type, you're not going to score well for task achievement. Coherence and cohesion. How well you organize your writing. You use clear paragraphs. You can use linking words and openers to introduce ideas. And just going back to the idea of paragraphs, you don't switch between ideas very quickly in different sentences or paragraphs. You organize your writing and your letter into a very orderly, easily understood piece of writing. Very important. Next up is lexical resource, basically a fancy way of saying vocabulary skills. And yeah, it's just the use and range of vocabulary. So have you repeated language a lot of times? Are you using advanced vocabulary? And really importantly, are you using vocabulary accurately in the right place? Or does it sound unnatural? Is your use of vocabulary not native in sound? Again, very important. And our last assessment criteria for the band descriptors is super important. I know it's 25% each, but this is really important. Grammatical accuracy, your level of grammar use, and how many errors you make with your grammar. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. So let's take a look at the IELTS official public band descriptors. So there we can see to the left, we have band 9, 8, 7, 6 and 5. Goes all the way down to 1. But there's no point really looking at those, to be honest. At the very least, we need to be, well, we probably should be aiming for a 6. But, you know, students generally, when they come to me, they might be around the 5 level, trying to push themselves up to those sort of 6.5, 7s, or maybe even more. So that we have the band descriptors on the left, and then against each of our assessment criteria, so we have task achievement. Now, I'm not going to read through everything. If you want to pause the video and have a read, you can do, but it might not be super helpful just to memorize all this information, but it is good just to have some understanding of what the examiner is thinking about when marking your work, because this can affect what and how we write our letter. So in the task achievement, if you go to band 7 and 6, you can see in brackets A for academic and GT for general training. Let's take a look at 6. A presents an overview with information appropriately selected. Now that's academic task 1, which is about the graphs and bar charts. Let's take a look at GT. Presents a purpose that is generally clear. There may be some inconsistencies in tone. So you've answered the question well, you understand the topic and what you need to write in your letter, but maybe the tone changes a little bit, so you might be mixing a bit of formal, informal tone. That's band score 6. So you can see even in a 6, there's some room for error. Let's go up to band score 7 and read GT. Presents a clear purpose with the tone consistent and appropriate. There might be a few more errors still, but overall a band score 7 piece of writing is pretty solid. Okay, I'll not read through the whole of this. Let's just go into coherence and cohesion. So this is all about how we organize our letter and we really think about how we structure our ideas. Let's take a read through band score 7 for coherence and cohesion. Logically organizes information and ideas. There is a clear progression in the writing, and paragraphs are really useful for that. Uses a range of cohesive devices appropriately, although there may be some under or overuse. That's a little bit examiner style language. I'll translate that. Cohesive devices basically are linking words and sentence openers. And what it's saying here is that maybe they're not being used enough, or maybe they're being used too often. And I often see students do that. They always try and open a sentence with a sentence opener. Furthermore. And I also believe, or these are just some quick examples, you don't always want to use things too much. You have to find the balance. So there you go. Again, you can read through the rest. That's coherence and cohesion. Lexical resource. Fancy word for vocabulary. Let's have a read through band score 7. Uses a sufficient, difficult to say, uses a sufficient range of vocabulary to allow some flexibility and precision. Sufficient range, so it's not super developed, but there is some evidence that you can use synonyms accurately in order to change your language up. Uses less common lexical items, so some advanced vocabulary, with awareness. So it might not be supernatural, as in you might have some slight errors in the use, but generally it's pretty strong, and may produce occasional errors in word choice, spelling, and or word formation. Okay, so that's at that band score 7, and I'm using 7 because I know a lot of students are aiming for that. And lastly, grammatical range and accuracy. Let's read through 7 again. Uses a variety of complex structures, produces frequent, error-free sentences. Now, frequent error-free sentences. So again, there's some room for some slight errors, but as we're moving into the 7s and 8s, your grammar really needs to be strong. And lastly, has good control of grammar and punctuation, but may make a few errors. So a 7, there'll only be a few errors throughout the writing. It's quite difficult to eliminate all errors. It's very rare I read a student's report and just think, wow, I'd barely change anything. But I just want to say in regards to grammatical range and accuracy, although these 4 assessment criteria are equally graded 25% each, the most common problem I see students make, which keeps their writing levels to these sorts of 5s and 6s, 6.5s, is errors in grammar. Now, I'll tell you that now, in the sort of earlier part of this course for our writing, because it's good for you to be aware of when you're self-assessing your own writing, that grammar is something that you really need to focus on. So really do try and work on your grammar, whether that's with a textbook, whether it's going through all the lessons in this course, whether it's watching and repeating my modelled writing answers, and also making sure you read in 30-40 minutes quality text every day. There are a different range of ways you can work on grammar, but it's super important, and it's a very common error that keeps students from achieving their desired band scores. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show you. Again, you can pause the video and have a real read through if you like. However, I think it's mostly just important that you have an understanding that the examiner is marking you on these 4 assessment criteria, and you don't need to memorize this, but it just gives you an understanding of what you need to do in order to get the band score you want.